connected to Sales Remastered.
When we're talking about FHA streamlines, we typically get inquiries because maybe one of the homeowners read a marketing ad or they saw one of your advertisements saying, you could lower your rate into the 2s or to the lower 3s. And again, when we get an inquiry or when we're outbounding for an FHA streamline, we have to change our perception. We have to look at it a little bit different because it's not a matter of selling it, it's just a matter of activating it. It's a matter of helping them activate it. Does that make sense? So let me give you an example. If I had Jim, we're just gonna use Jim. I love using Jim as the example for a prospect. If we were to receive a call from Jim and Jim received a mailer from my organization that advised him of an FHA streamline, no appraisal costs, no fees, etc., and you can drop your interest rate as low as, right? Now keep in mind that that's the marketing side. So even if, let's say, for FHA streamlines, they have what's called an NTB requirement. NTB stands for net tangible benefit. And so FHA really determines the interest rate because in order to do an FHA streamline, you have to drop the current interest rate by at least half a point. Not only that, but FHA also requires that you pay your closing costs because they're not gonna allow you to finance it in. So those are like the subtle nuances that you gotta be familiar with. And that's something that you can structure in on the back end. But just expect that when you're going into an FHA streamline quote or pitch, you should have already a plan for the closing costs. Whether it's them bringing in their skip payment, their deferred payment, right? And again, that's different from a refinance because sometimes we typically rely on that as an additional sale. Does that make sense? So we kind of throw that in as an incentive where we got to kind of switch it up with an FHA streamline and prepare to have them bring it in at closing. And so that can help offset the closing costs, but what happens if their deferred payment doesn't cover the closing costs? Well, you have to cover it through lender credit. Does that make sense? So I think the difficult challenge is, let's say Jim called and he has an FHA loan, which let's say a year ago, very popular interest rates at that time was in the high 4s or the high 5s. We'll just use 5% for an example. Very easy math, right? And Jim may have received a mailer that said, hey, you have access to these programs through FHA that can get you down into the higher 3s or the lower 3s. Keep in mind that that's the marketing aspect of that letter. That is the carrot to make the prospect call you. So the challenge that a lot of loan officers have is that they treat an FHA streamline very similar to a standard refinance lead. So they'll think that because Jim called me and asked for the 3.25 that he saw in the advertisement, that I have to deliver that 3.25. Keep in mind that all you really needed to do was just to get Jim's attention so that you can help him activate, not offer, right? Help him activate his entitlement because he's already paying insurance to receive these particular perks.